Good morning, everyone, and hope everyone's doing well in this period of quarantine and challenge that we're all facing. Um, Today, I'd like to share with you a very simple approach to meditation. It's a three-step approach, and it's very easy to access, and so I'd like to maybe introduce this three-step approach to you today, um, and hopefully you'll get a benefit from it. And if you can remember it and uh, use this video as a way to maybe stimulate it, you'll be able to benefit from this approach. It's a very simple approach, and so let's begin just with simply settling in and coming into contact with your system, your body, its sensations, your heart, um, your mind, and feeling yourself as deeply and as completely as you possibly can. And as you feel yourself, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to connect with the part of you. I would like you to connect with the part of you that has no beginning and has no end. So I'd like you to connect with the part of you that has no beginning and no end. So feeling into your experience, see if you can discover a place where you feel at this level of who I am, I have a feeling that I have no beginning and I have no end. And as you come into contact with that space, of feeling that at this level of my being, I don't feel like I have a place where I began, and I don't feel like I have a place where I end, where I finish. I have no beginning and no ending. And as you connect with this space of who you are that has no beginning and no ending, this is the first step, and I would like you just to kind of touch that space or come into contact with that space as deeply as you possibly can. To feel who you are at this level of your being where you have no beginning and no ending. And at this place where you have no beginning and no ending, at this level of your being, you realize that you have no borders. You have no frontiers. You have no lines where you can draw around you. Because if you have no beginning and no ending, there is no limit or no circle that you can draw around yourself. So in this dimension, or this level of your being where you have no beginning and no ending, you are not a thing. You are not an object. At this level where you have no beginning and no ending, you are not a limited object in this universe. You actually are something that has no limitation. And I don't want you just to believe me or on some level make that into a concept. I really would like you to come into contact with that yourself at that level right here and right now, even just a little bit if you can. So as you drop into this space where you have no, who you are at this level has no beginning and no ending, and you realize that at this level you're not an object, you're not a thing. Now, the second step of the meditation is to relate to the world around you. And from this place where you have no beginning, no ending, where you are not an object, if you pay attention, if you give attention, you can see that at this level of your being where you're existing without these borders, without these limitations, you are in contact with all of life. In this place where you are not a thing, you are in touch with everything in a certain way. This level of who you are that has no beginning and no ending, you in a way relate to all things that are contained in this space that you're in touch with, that you are actually arising from to a certain degree. The space of who you are that has no limitation, the space of who you are that has no beginning and no ending, is in touch with everything in this life. So as you rest, as you drop into this space, recognize this fundamental relationship with the experience of life itself. That you contain, or you're in touch with everything. As if, and not just as a concept, but really drop into this dimension or level of your being that has no limitation, that is not an object in your consciousness, but it's that dimension of your being that is without limit. It's the dimension of your being that is without limit and without end. And from this dimension of your being, you are in touch with everything in your experience. So the first step in the meditation is to come into contact with who you are at the level where you directly sense that you are something that has no beginning and no ending. The second experience of this meditation is to recognize that from this place of who you are, that has no beginning and no ending, you are in touch with the totality of your experience. You are not an object in your experience, you are the context of your experience. This level of your being that has no limitation is in touch with everything that is contained in your experience. All the objects, all the things are contained within the context of your experience. And the third step of this meditation, from this place of no limitation, no borders, where you experience yourself without any borders, without any beginnings, without any endings. And from this place where you have no borders, your relationship to life is one that connects with everything, every object in your experience is contained in this space that has no borders. So you have a direct relationship with life itself. And from this relationship, from this direct relationship with life itself, when you look at the totality of life itself, when you look at the totality of life itself, it's clear and it's obvious that life is doing the best that it can. That life is fundamentally unfolding in the best way, in the most fundamentally congruent way that it possibly can. The totality of life is moving in the most fundamentally natural and self-congruent way that it can. That's obvious. And when we recognize that, from this place of being without limitation, in touch with everything in our experience, and we can recognize that the totality of life is unfolding in its most self-coherent, self-congruent way that it can. Then our relationship to that unfolding of life is just naturally and fundamentally one of deep and fundamental acceptance. From this place of where we have no limitation, from this place where we have no beginning and no end, and our relationship to life is one of connection and a connection with the totality of life. We can open ourselves up to the realization that life is unfolding in the most congruent coherent way that it can. Life is doing the best that it can. It can do no else but that. And if we can recognize that and open ourselves to that, and we, of course, our individual natures are part of that movement. So if we can open ourselves up to that, the dimension of us that has no limitation, being able to be with all things. And of course, our identity is one of those things. Our ego, our history, our story. Our individual identity, which does have a beginning and does have an ending, is part of what we are in touch with, part of this movement of life. So from this place of no limitation, when we come into contact with the world of limitation, we can see that the movement of life is fundamentally moving in the most congruent and coherent way that it can move. It doesn't mean that it's perfect according to our ideas of the way things should be, but it is fundamentally moving in the most naturally congruent and coherent way that it can. And that movement of life, is a movement from the gross to the subtle, from the inert to the active, from the unconscious to the conscious. It is the movement of life striving to become more fundamentally aware of itself. And life is moving in that direction in fundamentally the best way that it can. And we are part of that movement. So this 3-step meditation is very simple. It's one, to connect with the level of who you are with no beginning and no end. And to recognize from this place where we have no beginning and no end, no limits, no borders, we're in touch with everything that we experience. We are not a thing inside our experience. We are the context of experience. And from this place of realizing that we are the context of experience and that we, in a way, contain our experience of life. When we look directly at the movement of life, we can see that life is fundamentally doing the best it can. The best it can at becoming more congruent, more coherent, more conscious of itself as itself. And then our nature, the nature of our relationship with that movement of life, is one of a deep acceptance and faith It doesn't deny our individual roles in this movement of life. It doesn't deny our individual responsibilities. But at the core level of our being, our relationship with life is one of deep acceptance. Because from this place of no limitation, we can see that the movement of life is fundamentally guided and evolving in the most congruent and coherent and natural way that it knows how to do. It's doing the best that it can. So opening to this, recognizing this, whether you open to it to a small degree or you let this in completely. It's a window into the nature of ourselves and our relationship to the movement of life around us. So I hope you are able to taste what I'm offering. And I send you my wishes for a continued discovery of the most important things in your life during this period of quarantine. Hope you're all well. And if you'd like to join me next week at 11 o'clock on Monday, I'll be leading another Facebook Live contemplative meditation process again. I want to thank you for joining me this morning, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me or private message me directly, and I will do my best to respond as quickly as I can. And we do have a class Wednesday evening. This week it'll be at 7:30, and that'll be on Zoom. You can find the link for the Zoom meeting on Aikido Montreux's Facebook page. And we'll be doing a direct exploration of principles and perspectives and movement directly related to the practice of Aikido. Okay? All right. Anyway, all my best. Take care of yourselves.